You've probably heard of this guy before, but the story of how he gained so much attention is lesser known. It's a story of risky decisions, a stubborn attitude, and ultimately one big project. Zhou Mingpei, better known as I. M. Pei, became one of the most influential architects of the late 20th century, earning awards like the Fitzger Architecture Prize in 1983 or the Presidential Medal of Freedom just 10 years later. Despite coming from a very traditional family, he broke architectural precedent and pioneered modern design. This guy had an incredible career, and in memory of his passing 5 years ago today, I want to tell you the story of how he became so influential. Okay, so I've been doing a lot of reading about this guy's work. But to understand what sets him apart, you have to know who this guy is, so let's start from the beginning. He was born in Guangzhou, China, on April 26, 1917, into an aristocratic Chinese family that made their wealth selling medicinal herbs. Pei became close with his mother, who was a devout Buddhist. She invited him, but not his 4 siblings, to join her on meditation retreats. He spent his summers as a child in the garden villas of Soju, the traditional retreat of the scholar gentry to which his family belonged. His family garden, known as Shizhen, or Lion Grove Garden, taught him that, quote, the hand of man joined with nature becomes the essence of creativity. He would later draw great inspiration from his time in Soju, which is made apparent in the buildings he would go on to design. In his words, you only have to cast your eyes on buildings to feel the presence of the past, the spirit of a place. They are the reflection of society. In 1935, he came to the United States to study in the University of Pennsylvania's architecture school. So Pei came all the way from China to the United States to study at one of the world's most prestigious architecture programs, something that many people dream of, but that wasn't enough for this guy. He ended up transferring to MIT that first year, but he still wasn't happy. Being the rebellious character he was, he criticized the traditional Beaux Arts architecture at the school, but his parents pressured him to stay put. He became obsessed with the freedom and creativity of the Bauhaus movement. He spent his time researching the works of modernists like Frank Lloyd Wright or emerging architects, especially his idol, Le Corbusier. After graduating, he joined the Harvard Graduate School of Design and befriended the Bauhaus architects Walter Gropius and Marcel Breuer. In 1948, Pei was recruited by New York City real estate magnate William Zeckendorf. So things are really taking off for him now. Under Zeckendorf, Pei and his team began work on a series of planning projects in Colorado, including the original Mile High Center and the redesigned Denver's Courthouse Square. He would go on to work on some very notable projects, including L'Enfant Plaza in DC, the Society Hill project in central Philadelphia, and much of downtown Montreal. While he did design a few buildings, much of his experience at this point in his career was in urban planning. Coordinating those big projects took a toll on Pei. As his projects grew larger, so did his management role. As a result, he felt disconnected from the actual design work. Design is something that you have to put your hand to, he said. While my people had the luxury of doing one job at a time, I had to keep track of the whole enterprise. You have to understand that Pei was tired of working for other people, and he wanted to make a name for himself. Being the stubborn guy he was, he couldn't put up with it, so in 1960 he made the difficult decision to officially leave the firm and close his partnership with Zeckendorf, who he considered to be a friend more than a colleague. He wasn't out of work for long, and just a year later he was given the opportunity to truly develop his architectural style when he was approached to design the new Mesa laboratory for NCAR. He immediately fell in love with the project and the site, where he understandably spent lots of time. I'm out here in the environment that inspired him to become the architect he became. He spent days up here, camping, hiking around, and exploring the area. He watched the sun fall between the Flatirons into Bear Canyon, and amongst the golden grass surrounded by gazing deer. He believed the site was spiritual, testing his preconceptions of architecture that he had developed in his early career. In his words, I recalled the places I had seen with my mother when I was a little boy, the mountaintop Buddhist retreats. There in the Colorado mountains, I tried to listen to the silence again, just as my mother had taught me. The investigation of the place became a kind of religious experience for me. He believed that architecture was an art, and in a place so picturesque, it's easy to understand why. He was assigned a monumental task, creating a man-made structure bold enough to live up to the setting, yet one that coexists with the site without distracting from its beauty. To achieve this, he took inspiration from an Incan archaeological site he visited a year earlier. Perched on the steep slopes of the upper Andes is a place called Ollantaytambo. Among the terraces and rubble walls of Ollantaytambo stand 6 gigantic stone slabs, a feature he wanted to reproduce. With Ollantaytambo in mind, Pei decided to explore the indigenous architecture of the American Southwest. He and his wife rented a car and set out on a journey that would take them to the southern Colorado and New Mexico. In Mesa Verde, he knew he found what he was looking for. He envisioned a structure reminiscent of the pillars of Ollantaytambo with the rectangular geometric forms of the Anasazi dwellings, with some circular elements hinting at ceremonial kivas. Atop the pillars would be hoods, or crow's nests overlooking Boulder, much like the towers perched in the cliffs of Mesa Verde. Materiality was important to his vision. Emulating the mud clay of Anasazi dwellings, he came up with the idea to use local aggregate and sand in the concrete to give the building its natural orange-pink hue of the native stone. Native stone like this one, with its deep red color. That aggregate, he would put into the concrete, and then using a technique called brush hammering, he would expose the aggregate, giving it that deep red color that he was going for. I'm out here with the drone to see the Mesa Lab as it stands today. The building that he designed respects the native environment and ancestral significance. He achieved his goal of not distracting from, but adding to the picturesque site, while still expressing his vision of a modern facility in his unique cubist style. Not only is the building beautiful, but it's also functional. The towers each provide office space for the different disciplines of researchers connected by communal courtyards. On the ground floor, there's a museum that lets scientists engage with the community and inspire the next generation. It also embraced the changing field with a first-of-its-kind atmospheric modeling supercomputer in this facility's basement. I'm here at the Mesa Lab, and to truly understand the attention to detail that Pei had, you must see the little details that he spent so much time working on. For example, the staircase here is seemingly floating off of the ground, suspended by nothing but the concrete itself. Or this curved element of the structure is symbolic of a kiva, which inspired this building. Here, this stone wall here has this carved recess into it, which light shines out from to illuminate this patio space. Even the furniture here he designed. He built many famous and impressive structures following Inkar up until his death 5 years ago, including the Louvre Pyramid in Paris, the Bank of China Tower in Hong Kong, and the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C. While the Table Mesa Lab may seem insignificant in his accomplished career, it's the building that inspired his notable style. The Mesa Lab was the success that he needed to continue his pursuit into architecture, and without it, he wouldn't have become as influential as he was. Thanks for watching, and if you stuck around this far, like me, you're probably a fan of his work. Ian Pei was an amazing architect, and unlike so many modernist architects of his time, he truly managed to embrace nature. If you're in Boulder and get the chance, hike or bike up to the Inkar Mesa Lab. Any aspiring designer can learn something from his structures, especially here in Boulder.